Dear learners, I am Srimati S. Vasavi Devi, lecturer in physics, Government College for Men, Karnool. Today, I am going to discuss one of the very important application of interference of light, that is Newton's rings. In this video, we are going to understand the formation of Newton's rings. We are going to derive the equations for radii of dark and bright rings and wavelength of monochromatic light. We are going to study the experimental determination of wavelength of monochromatic light by forming Newton's rings. By the end of this video, you will be able to answer the formation of Newton's rings. You will be able to derive the equations for the radii of dark and bright rings and wavelength of monochromatic light. You can perform an experiment to determine the wavelength of monochromatic light by forming Newton's rings. Prerequisites. In order to understand Newton's rings or the formation of Newton's rings, one must have a basic knowledge on conditions for interference, change of phase on reflection, and cosine law. This I have already discussed in our previous videos. You can refer to them. Okay, now in this video, we are going to study Newton's rings under reflected light, and this is the experimental arrangement. You can see here on the right side of the slide, you can see entire experimental arrangement, and on the left side you can see the interference pattern. Okay, how Newton's rings are formed because of interference. Now the question arises where the interference is taking place. Okay, so in the previous video you have already studied interference in thin films. Okay, here also this one comes under thin film. Where is the thin film? This is the thin film. An air film here. Okay, how this film is formed we are going to study in the experimental arrangement. You can see here in the experiment we are having a monochromatic source of light, a convex lens. Okay, when light falls on this convex lens, if the distance between source and lens is equal to the focal length of the lens, this convex lens renders the beam parallel. This parallel beam of light falls on a glass plate which is inclined at an angle of 45 degrees with the horizontal or vertical. Okay. The purpose of this glass plate is to direct this parallel beam of light onto the air film which is formed between plano-convex lens and plane glass plate. An air film is formed. A plane glass plate, this POQ is a plane glass plate. Over this plane glass plate, a plano-convex lens is placed in such a manner that the convex surface touches the glass plate. Then only air film is formed in between plano-convex lens and plane glass plate. Depending on the shape of the film, we are getting the interference pattern. Okay, so if you observe the shape of the film or if you imagine the shape of the film, this we can perform in our lab also. Shape of the film at the point of contact, thickness of the air film will be 0. And this thickness of air film increases on all sides surrounding the point of contact. At any point, if you take, the thickness will be constant. Okay, the locus of all points with constant thickness is a circle. That's why we get the interference pattern in the form of circles. So here the question is where the interference is taking place and which rays are involved in the interference. Here you can see this is incident beam of light. This incident beam of light falls on the glass plano-convex lens, and in between plano-convex lens and plane glass plate there is an air film. The rays which reflect from tops, partial reflection take place here. Here partial reflection takes place. That means part of the light gets reflected, part of the light goes into the film and again gets reflected at the bottom surface of the air film. The rays which are getting reflected from top surface of the film and bottom surface of the film, they differ in phase by mu t. Okay, while going from top to bottom it is mu t and bottom to top it is mu t. Of course this is air, so we can say T plus T. Mu is equal to 1 for air. T plus T. So the path difference between two reflected rays is 2T. Okay. Here you can see that thickness is not constant. It is variable. So depending on the thickness, if the thickness is integral multiples of lambda, we get a dark band. 2t is integral multiples of lambda, we get a dark band. If 2t is odd multiples of lambda by 2, we get a bright band. So that's how we are getting the interference pattern in the form of concentric rings. Okay, here we are studying interference under reflected light. Under reflected light, central spot is black and surrounded by concentric dark and bright rings. If at all it is in transmitted light, then the central spot would be bright. This is in accordance with the cosine law. Okay. So, the main point which you have to understand in this Newton's rings is where the interference is taking place. The interference is taking place between the reflected rays. The rays reflected from top surface of the film and bottom surface of the film. Both rays, they are derived from a single source. So, they behave as coherent sources and interfere with each other. If you place a traveling microscope in the right position, you can observe the Newton's rings. As these rings are observed by Newton, they are named after him. Okay. So, why this interference pattern is in the form of circles means at the point of contact thickness is 0 and this thickness is increasing in the form of circles. That's why we are getting interference pattern in the form of rings. You can see one more thing you can see here is interference, the fringe width at the center is more, near to the center fringe width is more. That means spacing between the fringes is more. But as we move outwards, the spacing decreases. This we need to observe and that we can calculate even mathematically also. That means as we move outwards, the fringe width decreases and the rings come closer. Near the center, rings are far apart, but as we move outwards, they get closer. Okay, so in optics, we have to learn the figures very neatly. Okay, only if you learn the figures, just from the figure itself, you can explain everything. So my advice for the students is you be well versed with the diagrams. Okay, so what all I have explained in the figure, I'm just rewinding you. So here coherent waves are produced by partial reflection. I have already mentioned rays reflected from top surface of the air film and bottom surface of the air film. Okay, so there the light is divided. So division of amplitude. Okay, by which method? Partial reflection. Okay, and the interference here takes place between reflected rays. And this point also I mentioned, thickness of air film gradually increases from center to outside. That's why interference pattern consists of alternate dark and bright concentric rings with central dark spot. According to cosine law, the central fringe is dark. Okay. Now, let us calculate the diameter of Newton's rings. Okay. So, we are saying that rings are forming. We can calculate the diameter of Newton's rings. Okay. So, very simple derivation. Here, this is a plano-convex lens. MQN is a plano-convex lens and its radius of curvature is capital R. Its radius of curvature is capital R. And this small r is the radius of Newton's ring, which is formed at a thickness of Tn. Okay, why I have written Tn means this thickness is not constant. It is changing. Just at this position, I am considering the thickness to be Tn and corresponding ring will have radius of Rn. That is one thing. So, if you have to make note of this figure. Now, let us say at the thickness of Tn, a dark band of radius Rn is formed. Okay, we are just assuming that let Rn is the radius of nth dark ring when the thickness of air film is Tn. Applying cosine law, for dark ring, the path reference 2 mu t cos r is equal to n lambda. Instead of t, I write Tn because t is not a constant. Okay. For air film, mu is equal to 1. For normal incidence, r is equal to 0. Cos r is equal to 1. So, this equation becomes 2Tn is equal to n lambda. This is equation number 2. So, for dark band, 2Tn is equal to n lambda. Next, similarly, for bright band or bright ring, this 2Tn becomes equal to 2n plus 1 lambda by 2. This is also from cosine law. Okay. So, we have taken two equations, equation 2 and equation 3 based on cosine law. And we will relate this equation to the geometrical equation. Let us see by geometry what this 2Tn is. By geometry, OP into OQ is equal to OM into ON. Okay. This OP you can see here. OP is equal to this diameter minus OQ. Okay. Diameter is 2R, 2 capital R minus OQ. OQ means Tn. Okay. So, n is variable. 2R minus Tn into Tn. OQ is equal to Tn. OQ is equal to Tn. So, 2R minus T. OP is equal to 2R minus this part is T. Okay, Tn. So, 2R minus Tn into Tn is equal to OM into ON. Rn into Rn is equal to Rn square. Okay. 2RTn minus Tn square. This minus Tn square I will neglect. So, 2RTn is equal to Rn square or 2Tn is equal to Rn square by capital R. So, we have two equations. One is 2Tn is equal to n lambda and the other one is 2Tn is equal to Rn square by R. Let us relate the two equations. Okay, if we relate the two equations, for nth dark ring 2Tn is equal to n lambda. For nth bright ring 2Tn is equal to 2n plus 1 lambda by 2. Here from geometry 2Tn is equal to Rn square by R. Okay. So, on substituting this equation in equation 2, we get radius of nth dark ring as instead of 2Tn is equal to Rn square by R, let us equate these two equations. LHSs are equal, so RHS, let us equate R and